In the rapidly evolving landscape of international relations, the dynamic between the United States and China remains a focal point of global geopolitical discourse. Following the recent inauguration of Donald Trump for his second term, analysts are closely examining the trajectory of U.S. China relations, particularly in the context of an escalating trade war. Odd Arne Westad, a prominent historian and expert on international affairs from Yale University, shared his insights in a recent interview with the Georgetown Journal of International Affairs, shedding light on the implications of this new administration for both nations and the broader world order. Westad notes that the competition between the U.S. and China under Trump will diverge significantly from the approaches taken by both the Biden administration and Trump's first term. He predicts a more structured form of intense competition with the potential for a grand bargain centered on trade, especially tariffs. Trump's administration may seek to utilize trade negotiations as a platform for broader discussions on technology and security issues, although Westad warns of the risks of escalating tensions into a full-blown tariff war that could exacerbate security concerns in East Asia. Central to understanding the complexities of this rivalry is a nuanced grasp of Chinese decision-making. Westad emphasizes that the political landscape in Beijing has shifted markedly in recent years, becoming increasingly centralized under Xi Jinping. The Chinese Communist Party's leadership has consolidated power to an extent that decision-making on foreign affairs is now concentrated at the highest levels, with the foreign ministry's influence diminished. This centralization, alongside a focus on China's preeminence in East Asia, raises critical questions about how domestic challenges, ranging from economic slowdown to generational dissatisfaction, could shape China's foreign policy in the coming years. The historical parallels drawn by Westad are particularly striking. He compares the current U.S.-China relationship to the tense dynamics between the United Kingdom and Germany before World War I, cautioning against simplistic Cold War comparisons. The early 20th century saw rapid globalization and rising dissatisfaction with the status quo, similar to today's geopolitical climate. As nations grapple with the perceived inequities of the global order, a pattern emerges that could lead to conflict if not managed carefully. The recent actions taken by the Trump administration, including the imposition of tariffs on Chinese imports, underscore the fragility of the situation. On February 4, Trump announced a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports, provoking an immediate retaliatory response from Beijing. The Chinese government responded with its own tariffs on U.S. goods, including coal and liquefied natural gas, as well as new export controls on critical minerals. These measures reflect a strategic decision by China to leverage its dominance in certain markets while also signaling its readiness to engage in economic warfare. Analysts suggest that these tariffs serve not only as economic instruments but also as bargaining chips in a high-stakes negotiation game. As the trade war intensifies, the implications for both nations, and indeed the world, are profound. Westad argues that the emerging multipolar world order necessitates a recalibration of how great powers interact. While the U.S. and China will remain dominant players, other nations, particularly in the global south, are increasingly asserting their independence and agency in international affairs. This shift towards a multipolar framework introduces both opportunities for collaboration and challenges in crisis management as the complexities of regional dynamics multiply. In this turbulent landscape, the importance of diplomacy and dialogue cannot be overstated. As Westad warns, the lessons of history remind us that miscalculations and misunderstandings can lead to catastrophic outcomes. The need for vigilant leadership and a commitment to negotiation is paramount, especially as both nations navigate the treacherous waters of competition and cooperation. Looking ahead, the future of U.S.-China relations will undoubtedly shape the contours of global politics. As both nations grapple with internal and external pressures, the world watches closely, hoping for a resolution that can balance competition with collaboration. The road ahead may be fraught with challenges, but the potential for a more stable multipolar world remains a tantalizing prospect. contingent upon the choices made by both Washington and Beijing in the months and years to come. In a dramatic escalation of trade tensions, the United States has implemented a 10% tariff on all Chinese imports, a move that has elicited an immediate and robust response from Beijing. This latest round of tariffs, which took effect on February 4, 2025, is the result of President Donald Trump's commitment to addressing what he perceives as China's failure to curb the export of fentanyl and related substances into the U.S. The tariffs are part of a broader strategy to pressure China amid ongoing concerns over narcotics trafficking, which has significantly impacted American communities. In retaliation, China has swiftly unveiled a series of countermeasures aimed at American goods, including additional tariffs on liquefied natural gas, coal, and agricultural machinery, among others. The Chinese government has also initiated an antitrust investigation into Google, a move that could complicate the tech giant's dealings within the Chinese market despite its existing restrictions in the country. As the Ministry of Commerce stated, these actions are designed to protect national interests and signal a strong response to the U.S. tariffs, which they argue undermine the global trading system. The imposition of tariffs is not new to U.S. China relations, however, the stakes are markedly higher this time. Trump's administration had previously imposed tariffs on a significant portion of Chinese imports, and now with this latest measure affecting over $400 billion in goods, the economic implications are profound. Bert Hoffman, a former World Bank official, opined that while China's current retaliatory measures may seem limited, targeting only about 30% of U.S. exports, the country is likely holding back more severe responses for future use, indicating a cautious yet strategic approach. The timing of these tariffs coincides with increasing scrutiny of Trump's broader trade policy, which has already seen a pause in tariffs on Canada and Mexico following agreements to enhance fentanyl oversight. Trump's approach is seen as an opening salvo, with the potential for further escalations if negotiations with China do not yield satisfactory results. During a recent statement, Trump underscored his willingness to use tariffs as a tool to compel foreign governments to meet U.S. demands, reinforcing the notion that trade negotiations will be fraught with uncertainty. As the situation develops, the geopolitical landscape is shifting. Xi Jinping, China's president, has been proactive in strengthening trade ties with countries in Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia, positioning China as a more independent economic powerhouse. This strategy may be seen as an opportunity for China to consolidate its influence while the U.S. grapples with its internal divisions under Trump's leadership. Observers note that the current trade war could inadvertently shift global alliances, with countries reassessing their positions in light of U.S. unpredictability. Moreover, the trade conflict underscores a significant challenge for both nations, balancing domestic pressures with international relations. As China faces its own economic slowdown, it is keenly aware of the repercussions a prolonged trade war could have on its growth trajectory. The Chinese government has thus far maintained a measured response, advocating for dialogue even as it prepares for potential escalation in hostilities. A spokesperson from the Chinese embassy in Washington reiterated the futility of a trade war, emphasizing the need for constructive dialogue rather than confrontation. The unfolding scenario suggests that the U.S.-China relationship may be on the brink of a new phase of negotiation, with Trump's unpredictability and Xi's strategic maneuvering in constant tension. As both leaders contemplate their next moves, the global economic landscape hangs in the balance, awaiting resolutions that could redefine trade relationships for years to come. Observers and analysts alike will be watching closely as the two largest economies navigate this intricate web of tariffs, trade, and diplomacy, with implications that extend far beyond their borders. The future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the trade war is far from over, and its ramifications will be felt worldwide. Amid escalating tensions between the United States and China, a recent report from the RAND Corporation has shed light on the capabilities and intentions of the Chinese military, casting doubt on its readiness for conventional warfare against the U.S. This analysis comes at a time of heightened scrutiny over China's rapid military modernization, which has been framed by some as a significant threat to U.S. interests in the Indo-Pacific region. The report, authored by Timothy R. Heath, a senior defense researcher at RAND, challenges the prevailing narrative that the People's Liberation Army (PLA) is fully prepared for conflict, particularly in the context of the ongoing geopolitical rivalry. Despite substantial investments in military hardware, including an expanding fleet of warships and combat aircraft, the report asserts that the PLA's primary mission remains the preservation of the Chinese Communist Party's CCP authority rather than effective combat readiness. Heath emphasizes that the PLA is structured around maintaining political loyalty to the CCP, which he argues comes at the expense of operational effectiveness. The core of the PLA's system of political controls includes political commissars, party committees, and the political organization system, he notes, highlighting how these elements are designed to ensure military subordination to the party. This political oversight, while intended to reinforce loyalty, has been criticized for stifling the military's ability to respond swiftly and decisively in combat scenarios. The report points out that the PLA has not engaged in a war since 1979, leading to concerns about its combat experience and readiness. Recent military exercises have been marked by a lack of integration, as highlighted by criticisms within Chinese media regarding the military's operational capabilities. Heath's findings suggest that the PLA's reliance on political loyalty over military competence has resulted in a force that, while modernized, may not effectively engage in large-scale conflicts against a formidable adversary such as the U.S. military. Adding to the complexity, the report reveals that decision-making within the PLA is hampered by a centralized command structure that requires approval from numerous levels of government for even basic operational decisions. This bureaucratic process raises questions about the PLA's ability to react promptly in a crisis, potentially leaving it vulnerable in critical moments. Furthermore, the report underscores that despite the PLA's modernization efforts, Chinese leaders appear to show little interest in initiating a conventional war with the U.S., particularly concerning contentious issues such as Taiwan. Heath notes that Xi Jinping's rhetoric on Taiwan remains consistent with previous administrations, lacking the urgency typically associated with impending military action. The implications of the RAND report are significant, suggesting that the U.S. must reconsider its threat assessments regarding Chinese military capabilities. While the possibility of conflict cannot be entirely dismissed, especially in light of China's domestic challenges, the report posits that Chinese leaders are more focused on deterring Taiwanese independence through non-military means. In a related development, the tensions between the U.S. and China have been further exacerbated by recent military maneuvers in the South China Sea. The Philippines and the U.S. conducted joint air patrols over this contested region, sparking anger from Beijing. China's military has condemned these actions as efforts to undermine regional stability, reinforcing the increasingly fraught interactions between the involved parties. As the geopolitical landscape continues to evolve, the question of how the U.S. will navigate its relationship with China remains critical. The RAND report serves as a reminder of the complexities involved, as both nations grapple with their military capabilities and political ambitions. Looking ahead, trends in military readiness, strategic posturing, and domestic pressures within China will likely play a crucial role in shaping future U.S. China relations as policymakers strive to balance deterrence with the pursuit of diplomatic solutions.